You all recall we have had issues in the past with public school teachers, and we called it pass the trash. Gypsy teachers who would have sexual misconduct with students or sexually assault students. And what they would do at that time was allow the teachers to resign and move on to another school and again assault or have sexual misconduct with another student. This went on until 1985 that I introduced legislation to try to stop this practice of teachers going from school district to school district without having it reported. And then in 1917, Senator Bettencourt passed legislation to prohibit sexual misconduct and sexual assault and have the practice of not reporting teachers to proper authorities stopped. And this is what this bill does. The main objective of this amendment is to make sure that all our students, whether in public schools or private schools, are protected from actual predators and pedophiles in the classroom. Recent headlines: former Dallas private school teacher accused of sexually assaulting child, June 2024. Former Plano private school teacher accused of grooming student, January 2024. Former Fort Worth private school band director arrested, faces charges of soliciting minor, December 2024. This is just a very small sample of sexual assault and sexual misconduct with students that's happening in our private schools. With this amendment, we will prevent the harmful practice of passing the trash or employing gypsy teachers at private schools. It promotes transparency, accountability, and safety in our classrooms to protect our students. This amendment establishes that private school administrators and teachers will be subject to the same laws and regulations as those that now apply to a public school system that protects our children. This is important to maintain consistent standards of safety and accountability across all our schools. Educators have positions of authority, have extensive access to students where no other adults or even other students, in some cases, are present, and have access to confidential information that could provide a unique opportunity to exploit students that are vulnerable. Educators must clearly understand the boundaries of the educator-student relationship that they are trusted not to cross. So what does this amendment do? It addresses the problem of gypsy teachers, a pass the trash problem that we face with public schools. We corrected that through legislation, but yet we have done nothing in this bill, Senate Bill 2, to address this issue. What this amendment does requires that parents or guardians of students in private schools receive notification about educator misconduct in a manner as parents of students in public schools are contacted. It strengthens the reporting requirements for misconduct at private schools to mirror the requirements that we pass for public schools. It requires administrators to notify the State Board of Educator Certification if a candidate resigned or was terminated and there was evidence the educator committed an unlawful act with a student or a minor. Requires notification to the State Board of Educator Certification regarding educators who possess, transfer, sell, or distribute controlled substance. That means, i.e., drugs in the private schools, like they did in our public schools. Instances of illegally transferring or appropriating or misusing school funds or property. Attempts to fraudulently obtain or alter a professional certificate or license for the purpose of promotion or additional compensation. Criminal offenses committed on school property or at other school-sponsored events. It also requires the chief administrative officer of a private school to complete an investigation on any of the above, regardless of whether the educator resigns from employment before the completion of the investigation, what used to be the practice in public schools. Lastly, it provides public schools equal access to reports of misconduct. This amendment is important to safeguard our students at public and private schools and to protect them from sexual predators that exists in our private school, as I just read some headlines a while ago, a very small example of what's happening right now in our private schools. All you have to do is read the newspaper. In many churches, there's sexual misconduct that's been exposed. So this is a way to protect our children that be attending private schools.
Chair recognizes Senator Blanco for what reason? You right.
Questions for the other?
Senator Hinojosa Hidalgo, do you yield?
I yield.
Thank you, Senator. So just to be clear, what we're doing here with this amendment is that we're mandating the State Board of Education educator certification when a private school is involved in some kind of misconduct. That's correct?
That's correct, Senator Blanco, and as we all know, sexual misconduct has taken place in many of our religious schools and in many of our churches here in Texas and the nation.
Can you walk me through how it works? So who's required to report the misconduct under this amendment?
The administrator of the private school.
Okay.
It's called a principal or assistant principal or director or whoever's in charge of a private school.
So it creates transparency. Can you walk us through how it creates more transparency?
Well, for one, it provides that when there's any sexual misconduct by a teacher, that they be reported not only to the parents, but also to the proper authorities or the State Board of Educator certification, so they can revoke the permit.
Great. Thank you, Senator. I think this is an important amendment, and I think it's going to ensure that students are safe no matter what educational institution that they're attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blanco.
Senator Creighton, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, there's so much merit in Senator Hinojosa's well-thought-out amendment. There's also some redundancy with Senator Betancourt's amendment earlier on the do not hire registries that are imposed and required under the ESA program and in the comptroller's framework that's being developed. Imposing certain protocols on assault and other violations that protect students, imposing those certain protocols on private schools without a hearing or vetting more thoroughly through a separate bill. I would be hesitant to do that on the ESA legislation, but I will commit to you, Senator Hinojosa, to open up the discussion on these concepts under the guise of protecting students in Texas by giving this bill a hearing in the Senate Education Committee so that we can take our time with it and understand the consequences. For that reason and other reasons stated and the redundancy stated, I would move to oppose the amendment.
Mr. President, I would the gentleman yield for just a quick question.
No, you had the floor. He spoke on the amendment. Now we vote. It wasn't a tabled situation.
Well, he did offer to help, so I just want to clarify that.
If you want to yield, you can.
President, I felt like I gave my answers.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to cut off discussion by my colleague and friend, Senator Hinojosa, so I would yield.
But normally, just for the record, guys and ladies, as we're moving forward, unless it's a tabled issue, it does not come back to the person with the amendment. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Under senatorial courtesy, I would absolutely yield and let you finish your point, of course, Senator Hinojosa.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I understood correctly that you're willing to consider a separate independent bill to address this issue, because I think it's a very serious issue.
That's exactly what I said. We can review these concepts in a separately filed bill in a hearing in the Senate Education Committee, which I will certainly commit to giving you a hearing and priority to understand a lot of what you're suggesting here better, and so that our Senate education members can take their time with these concepts. There are parts of this amendment that are redundant based on Senator Betancourt's amendment that's already on the bill, but separately there are some concepts we need to spend more time with. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Hinojosa.
I accept a vote also.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I move adoption.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
11 ayes, 20 nays. The amendment fails. Members, following amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 36 by Menendez.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized on your amendment.